All right, looks like we're live. All right, what's going on, Carnation? It's your boy John with Cardinal Craze. Today on the show, we have our special guest from the Gridiron Expert, Alex. Alex, how you doing?
I'm doing great, John. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, of course. We love having you back out here on the show, talking about some college football, some Louisville Cardinals. Definitely want to really focus in on this coming game. Wake Forest versus Louisville. Louisville's going to be on the road. What are some of your takeaways about this game?
Well, there's a lot, obviously. I think one of the things you want to look at the most is last year. Wake Forest was a pretty big favorite in this game, and Louisville, as we know, came in and just manhandled them. Right? They Louisville wasn't anything too special in 2020, and everybody kind of had thought the Demon Deacons would have this one in the bag. They were a team that was taking care of the football extremely well, and then were turned the ball over left and right. I don't remember the exact score of that game, but what was it, like 45-21, something like that. I mean, it was a ridiculous win for Louisville last year. It's going to be interesting to see how Wake Forest responds to that, because obviously both teams are very different from what we saw at the end of 2020. That game, of course, was late November, early December. And so Wake Forest is a completely different team, a ranked team now, 24th in the country. Louisville, I will say, if they win this game, will be ranked. Absolutely. The Cardinals would deserve that with the win over UCF already, and obviously the only loss coming to Ole Miss, and not a bad loss at all, as we've seen the Rebels play so well. So that's one major storyline I'm looking at here. And then obviously, again, I know we'll touch on it a little bit more, but defensively, defensively has always been, as we know, last year a strength for Louisville was last year, especially with the number one ranked passing defense in the conference. But can they do that again? Can they hold up again against this Wake Forest passing attack from Sam Hartman, who right now I think is one of the best quarterbacks in the ACC, if not the best quarterback in the ACC?
Oh no, Sam Hartman has really stepped up to the plate. And I agree with you. If Louisville does beat Wake Forest, they will deserve a top 24 ranking, top 25, or even a top maybe even a top 30 ranking, depending upon how well they do, how well they perform. But definitely, I'm excited. Sam Hartman has blown everyone away, and Malik Cunningham he staggered during the Ole Miss game. The play calling was not good. There was a lot of issues, and people were after Scott Satterfield on Twitter. There was left and right. Everyone was already jumping ship looking for a new head coach. But honestly, against the UCF game, the play calling got immensely better. FSU, the first half of that game, it was tremendous. But definitely, eyes are now back on Malik Cunningham and Scott Satterfield's play calling. Can they be able to hold up a front against this overpowering Wake Forest offense?
And that's really the $1 million question, right? Is if this game turns into a high scoring game, which we know Wake Forest can put up the points, as we've seen, Louisville can do the same. But can the Cardinals hang with the Demon Deacons, right? I mean, it's the Wake Forest team that's won every game this season by at least 20 points. That includes a 20-point road win at Virginia, a team that just last night took down Miami on the road. And say that's impressive, say it's not impressive. I know Miami's nothing like we thought they would be, but took down Florida State, who, yes, is 0-4, but it's still the Seminoles, beat them by 21. And then obviously Norfolk State and Old Dominion, nothing impressive there. But every win's been at least by 20 points. As a team that's averaging well over 30 points per game. Does Louisville have what it takes to hang with them step for step? And let's not sleep again on this Wake Forest defense either. I mean, this is a defense that returns practically everybody from last year. Now, lose a couple guys up front on the defensive line, but I think they filled those voids very nicely. To me, it's the back seven that's been really strong for Wake Forest so far this year, limiting the big pass plays, creating turnovers, and you can't help but wonder, if they play as strong as they do, Louisville, Scott Satterfield, they're going to have to come up with a game plan that maybe involves more of a run-heavy scheme than a pass-heavy scheme with Cunningham.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. Cunningham is definitely going to have to step up and become more of a passer, especially if Scott Satterfield wants to change up this play calling. Now, over the past 2 years, we've seen the first year was an immense success. 8-5 is what they went, beat out Mississippi State at the Music City Bowl. Go into 2020, and that was a disaster. And honestly, there were a lot of issues, and most of it stemmed from COVID, concerns, and just a whole bunch of mess that a lot of people do want to overlook just because there were so many problems. But entering this year, yes, Scott Satterfield does need to kind of wean off that running game that he is so heavily relied on for so many years, and especially in the Sun Belt division, he loved the running game, but they also had an effective passing game. So going into this game, Wake Forest, like we said, they have a powerful passing game. They have great depth on offense and immensely on defense. Now, A.T. Perry is Wake's best wide receiver with 292 yards. He averages 7.2 yards per carry, and he's only had 3 touchdowns. Compare that to Louisville. Our best decorated wide receiver is I'm trying to remember how you pronounce his first name. I have Hughes Bruce. It's Huggins Bruce. I'm can't remember for the life of me. But for the most part, he has 174 yards. He averaged 24.9 averages a carry. He does not have any touchdowns. So our receiver core is very young, very complicated, honestly. And going into this game, we're going to have to rely on a lot of new faces, and especially if we want to change up that play calling. Malik Cunningham going into this game has been averaging about 7.3 yards a pass. He's completion to attempt ratio. He's completed 85 of his passes out of 137. Now, mind you, that's not terribly bad considering how awful last year was. He's accumulated 998 yards, which is good, 5 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. So I'm actually very happy about that. Compare that with Sam Hartman. He had a completion and average ratio. He completed 74 for only 112 attempts, which is quite amazing. I've seen him in his games, and he is a bullet for an arm. I mean, or I guess a cannon, really. And it's kind of scary to see how many close calls and passes he actually is able to make, which is, another really step up. And what I admire about their wide receiver game, their wide receiver game is just crazy. But he averaged 8.6 per pass. The collective is 961 yards, 9 touchdowns, only 1 interception so far. Now, Sam Hartman is definitely someone I am terrified of going into this game. Yes, Louisville has a good pass defense, but our defensive line has, we've kind of had a mix because I've seen the defensive line do great things, and I've seen them flop, fall, get thrown, tossed aside like rag dolls. And we've had almost injuries, having to resort and bringing in guys who were secondaries, backups. There's a lot of concern for me about, is Louisville's defensive line going to be able to stand up to Wake Forest's heavy pass offense and offensive line that is one of the best in the country? What do you think?
Yeah, it's a great question, actually. And that's kind of one of the things I'm thinking of too. When you look at Wake Forest and their offense, the thing that has stood out to me the most is how balanced they are. I mean, 242.3 passing yards per game, 188.3 rushing yards per game. And I like what you said about Sam Hartman too, about how great he is accuracy-wise and just how great of an arm he has. A couple of years ago, it wasn't too long that we saw Wake Forest almost splitting time at quarterback with Sam Hartman and Jamie Newman. Jamie Newman was a guy that was more of a dual threat quarterback in that scenario, and then Sam Hartman was a guy that obviously was the better passer, and we always knew that he was very accurate, took great care of the football. And that's no exception this year with that 1 interception. And the key really for Louisville is going to be finding a way defensively to disrupt that, because I do think that Louisville can handle the run. Wake Forest has Christian Beal-Smith, who has over 270 yards, averaging 5 yards a carry. Great numbers. But Wake Forest wants to run the football, or pass the football, excuse me. They want to throw it. Wide receiver core is loaded. A.T. Perry. We even mentioned Akari Roberson, who was one of the best wide receivers coming into the ACC this year. He's right behind A.T. Perry with 245 yards and 2 touchdowns on the year. So their wide receiver core is deep, and in turn, that really helps out a quarterback like Hartman to have weapons like that. And that's not something that you can really say is the same for Louisville. The talent is there without a doubt, but as you even mentioned, it's a young wide receiver core. You're going to have to see guys step up to try to take that pressure off of Cunningham, who's not only obviously the top passer for Louisville, but he's the leading rusher too, with that 263 yards and 8 rushing touchdowns. So I really think that Louisville, really more than anything, is going to have to find a way to disrupt Sam Hartman, and whether that is what they did last year, and that's by forcing turnovers, or whether that's breaking through that strong Wake Forest offensive line and creating pressure. They've got to find a way to disrupt him and almost make the Demon Deacons one-dimensional, because so far this season, they haven't been that. They have been multi-dimensional. They can beat you on the ground. They can beat you through the air. Louisville's got to find a way to take that away, just like they did at the end of 2020.
Oh, yeah, especially. Now, kind of like you mentioned earlier, the Demon Deacons defense is going to be, they have a good defense. They have a good veteran, defensive line. They have great defensive backs. I mean, one of the defensive backs, Luke Masterson, he's a defensive back. He has solo 18 tackles, 9 assists, totaling 27, 2 sacks. I mean, and then you go behind that and you have Ryan Samida. He's a linebacker. He has 10 solo, 13 assists. I mean, this is a very, very talented defense, and there's a lot that concerns me going into this game. Now, is this going to be a surefire win for the Demon Deacons? I don't think so. I think we could definitely see a shootout like we did in the 2019 season, where we went, oh goodness, I think it was up in the 60s if I remember correctly. It was like 65.
Yeah.
It was a very insane game, and honestly, our running back core, Jalen Mitchell, I really think he's going to be the next big wide receiver at Louisville. I'm sorry, running back at Louisville. But there's a lot of questions. He's still very young. But for the most part, let me ask you, what are some of your predictions for this game?
Yeah, I like what you said from a few years ago. We've seen some classics lately, upsets. We've seen classic games. It was 62-59 just a few years ago, and that was an upset. No one saw it being that high scoring. I don't think anyone saw Louisville winning that game. I think this game certainly has the potential to arguably be Wake Forest's toughest test of the year. When you look at their schedule, the toughest game they've had so far was Virginia, right? And they beat them by 20.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna pick. I hate coming on shows for certain teams and picking against that team. I hate doing it. But I am going to do it here. I like Wake Forest too much. I honestly think if this game was in Louisville, if it was on the road for the Demon Deacons, I would like the Cardinals' chances better. Playing in Winston-Salem is going to be tough. It's an early morning game that tends to benefit the road team. So Louisville can jump out to that early lead. If they jump out to an early 10-0, 14-0 lead, pop Wake Forest in the mouth early, all bets are off, right? It changes everything. But I don't think that happens. I think Wake Forest comes in prepared for this game, a little bit of revenge on their mind. I see them winning this game, but it's not going to be by a lot. They've won every game by 20. I think this is the first one-possession game that Wake Forest has to deal with this year, because this Louisville team is different and looks way different than the team that we saw against Ole Miss. And that turning point, as I'm sure you and I can both agree, was that win over UCF. If they don't win that, we're talking about this game very differently. We're talking about this season very differently. But that was the turning point, I feel like, for Scott Satterfield in this program. And so now you come into this Wake Forest game. And obviously, also, we should just mention, with the Atlantic Division being as wide open as it is, with Clemson now having a conference loss to NC State and not looking too hot, all bets are off. So this game holds a lot more weight for the potential of who wins this division than we ever thought it would a couple weeks ago. So I like Wake Forest in this game by one possession, somewhere around the likes of maybe 31-24, 38-31, somewhere around there. But I like the Demon Deacons, but it'll be close.
Well, I definitely agree on that. But I have learned my lesson since our video versus the Ole Miss. I was way too hyped up on a lot of things, and there was a lot of issues, and I felt very silly. And definitely in the comments on YouTube, there was a lot of I honestly got a gotcha moment, because I really was caught off guard. But let me tell you, the Wake Forest versus Louisville predictions for me, it's going to be best case scenario, Louisville 35, Wake Forest 24. Now, let's say worst case scenario, it's going to be Louisville 27, Wake Forest 41. I think we're going to still have that good offense right there, but I'm not sure that our defense can really hold up against this immense offense, especially Sam Hartman, unless something happens. Like you said, if Louisville gets off the ground early, kind of did what we saw against FSU, and just storms in, all right, maybe racking up, I want to say 14, maybe even 21 points before the end of the second half. Before halftime. Essentially, yeah, I could see this game going very differently. If it's stagnant, it's going back and forth, our defense can't keep up, and we're now trying to play basically catch up. Yeah, it's going to be reminiscent of that 2019 game. And honestly, I'm just more concerned over how well is our defense going to come out and is going to be able to stop them. But for the most part, that's kind of my prediction. And like you said, everything is up in the air. This year, Clemson is basically kind of fallen by the wayside right now. I don't know if they're going to be able to pick up towards the middle of the season. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but they're definitely going to re-rank. They're going to reshuffle a couple of guys, and I'm sure we're going to see that old Clemson Tiger come back and rear its ugly head in the ACC. But again, all bets are off. This is a wild year. I'll tell you, I really wish I had picked. If I was a betting man, I would have gone in heavily on NC State during that game. But
I don't blame you, man. That was a toss up for me. But honestly, it's one of those things that in the ACC and nationally, I was happy NC State won that game. We're seeing a little bit of parity now, not just in the conference, but nationally. This has by far been one of the craziest years in college football history, maybe the craziest year that I've ever witnessed, maybe better than the 2007 season. So we're in for a fun ride. It's still early. No one knows what's going to happen. It's probably a good thing you're not a betting man because I am, and it's been a little rough this year so far.
No, don't. Yeah, I know. It's a good thing I'm not, because I would have bet the house on that Ole Miss game, and I would be poor homeless on the street right now. But you know what? For the most part, I'm geared up for tomorrow at 12:30. That's when kickoff is, Eastern Standard Time. So hopefully everyone will be able to watch the game, or even go out and go to North Carolina and participate. I can't wait to see that. I will be following up later after the game with some of my thoughts on what happened and some different things going on. But for the most part, everyone needs to go check out the Gridiron Expert on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. Definitely give Alex a follow. He's got a separate personal page. If you guys want to go follow him, see some of his thoughts. But for the most part, Card Nation, we're really wishing for the best, and hopefully it'll come out the way we did. And Alex, I know you don't like rooting against the home team, but you know what? After Ole Miss, I honestly, I'm not going to judge you.
Well, I appreciate it. Hey, like I said, long season. The season can easily be defined right here too. Keep the momentum going.
Oh yeah, most definitely. But here, I'll do the closing thoughts. But for the most part, Card Nation, definitely drop your predictions down below. Go to the Gridiron Expert. Check out all of his previews for different games that he has. And he actually did one the other day. I think it was against Georgia and Arkansas for coming up. Definitely check that out on YouTube. And for the most part, go Cards.